Hello, welcome to Witchcraft Live. It's Liam and Chris from the Thoth Witchcraft Shop. I've been a messing around with
Gonna
graphics and
say Liam's
stuff.
clearly had far too much time on his hands.
No, I'm doing this Santa Muerte documentary thing, and I've got to learn how composition shots work and
Okay.
stuff. So I do some nice
Okay.
composition shots in the graveyard and that. Um, but yeah, so today's topic on the monthly Q&A will not only just be whatever the heck you decide to ask us, because of course we always try and answer your questions, but we're mainly going to be covering the theme of egregores, tulpas, thought forms,
Fetches.
homunculi, yeah, that. Um, so, Chris, shall we start with some basics of? Let's go for tulpas because that's probably the easiest one. I'd think that's
Okay.
the easiest one anyway. What would you call it? What's a tulpa?
So for me, a tulpa is a collective thought form. So it would be powered by a group or a community, not necessarily consciously. With tulpas, they can happen by accident, where enough people believe in a certain thing. So if you were going to go and start a mythology about Fanny Cranach, for example, if
She's real.
enough people, if they were to believe in a particular story about her, you could potentially give that enough power to happen. So ideas for this would be Loch Ness monster, if it's not a kelpie, or Saint Nick, Santa Claus. Enough people believe in the myth that actually there is potentially enough power there to make that happen separately. So even if the entity already exists, there is nothing stopping a thought form to be created from that. So for me, I think that's the biggest difference with tulpas is they're not always on purpose. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think that the primary thing is that tulpas are quite kind of an accident, I would
Yeah.
say. So where what is it? Where attention goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
So my question, I suppose, then is Boris Johnson a tulpa?
Well,
Because some
no.
people on the news and such have been saying he ain't real, he's just a character. But yeah,
No.
I turn on the telly box and he's
They're talking
there.
about his personality, Liam.
Okay, so
That's what they're
right,
talking about
okay,
there.
right, right, okay. So okay, so we've got our first question, which is a seek Jesus, bro, not witchcraft. Don't be like narcissists.
Okay.
Okay.
I
I
think
don't
that
quite
is,
understand what that means.
we must be getting big because that sounds like that is somebody that wants to be involved.
Okay. So are we
Mm.
narcissists? I don't really know.
I should hope so.
I thought I was a sociopath, but I know that narcissism is not too dissimilar. A lot of people that get diagnosed with psychopathy, called sociopaths, tend to be narcissistic. But I don't
Yes.
know if I'm classed as a
No, I don't think you're
sociopath,
quite a
classed as a
narcissist.
narcissist. No. I don't really care enough about myself to be a narcissist. I don't think. I don't know.
No,
But
no.
anyway,
But
yes.
he did bring up a very interesting point, which if
Mhm.
you want to take down a slightly American Gods feel to that,
Ah,
then how many Jesuses were at Easter's party?
this is very true. Um,
So how
I
many of
don't
those were
know.
actually Jesus and how many of them were tulpas?
Because in the
What do you
American
reckon?
Gods thing, are they all tulpas? Because
I
they
think they're
die
all
when
tulpas
people
in
don't
there.
believe in them anymore, don't
Yeah.
they? So,
Whereas a God
and
wouldn't do
they're
that.
yeah, okay. So technically, the a god as well. You would say the lower form of God and a higher form of God. I would class that a higher form of God is something that needs to be there, is an underpinning kind of part of the universe. So
Yeah.
it needs to be
Part of the
there for
universe is
this.
cogs.
Yeah. Whereas the lower forms of gods, normally I would class those as spirits that are super powerful. So you
Yeah.
could take them away, and yes, there'd be a lot of devastation and trouble and such that would be caused, but the universe
They're
ain't going to come
created
a
through
crashing
the
down.
process of
Yeah.
deification. So there are
So,
gods that have been added to the stars, shall we say.
mm. So okay, so tulpas and stuff like that then, because that's the difference. So with egregores and those sorts of things, you're actually breathing life into it. So
Yeah.
you're actually using some form of magical ritual or ceremony or spell or whatever to create that thing and breathe life into it. Often, a lot of the times, they're used. People use clay to make them, don't they?
Yeah.
And there are some complex rituals and some simple rituals and things that you can use to make them, but they're normally designed for a specific purpose. Whereas this kind of tulpa thing, like you kind of said, is a little bit more of an accident. So
Yeah.
a lot of the superstitions, like you see Slender Man or Bloody Mary and all that sort of thing, are they, how would you tell whether that's a tulpa, whether that's something that, because so many people focus on it, kind of something starts to materialize there, or whether it was an actual spirit or something like that that was there before? So is it something that appeared because some idea became famous, or is it something that a spirit just suddenly become famous? How would you tell
Okay.
the difference?
Okay. So how would I know the difference between Santa from the Coke commercials in red, opposed to actually St. Nicholas or Santa Claus or any of the others that could possibly be the same entity? Um, I would say is they could change form, is how I would class it. So if you asked a
Mm.
deity to change their form, they could change it for you. You know, switching Mars into a woman, or you know what I mean? Like it is a case of they have enough power over their visage to make changes to it. So the only way you could change a tulpa would if you changed the mythology in order to force a change upon the tulpa.
Okay, but to a certain extent, is that not power? So you're talking about evolution now. So if a tulpa,
Yeah.
can a tulpa therefore become more powerful and powerful enough to define its own evolution? Because we know egregores can, because that's a
Hmm.
mistake many a junior magicians make all the time, because they don't put a limit on the power of how an egregore can grow, and then it can grow and grow and grow into something that goes beyond its programming. So in terms of tulpas then, because I would really just see the difference is where it came from. I think that a tulpa has more power over it and more self-awareness perhaps than an egregore does, just because I see most of the time when I meet egregores or see egregores or work with them, they've been designed by people that stunt their growth, like a bonsai tree. Now, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that if you take a bonsai tree and put it in the ground, a lot of them can grow bigger. So if you remove those blockages, then
Remove the
obviously
restrictions.
you remove the restrictions. But it is one of those things that with these egregores and tulpas and stuff like that, what is the limits that they can grow? Would they be able to evolve more than a human or a witch or even maybe a neo-pagan?
Well, most people can grow beyond the realms of a neo-pagan, the the it's you so set me up there on purpose. But
Of
yeah,
course.
what I was gonna say there before, which isn't answering your question, I'll come back to that, is I was asked recently in another group somewhere about how would I tell the difference.
Mm,
And I said, well, it would depend on whether or not you had, you know, you were capable of seeing energy or not. So,
mm,
because if you're going to break it down, then you'd be able to see where its tethers are from.
mm,
So, if a tulpa is created, for example, you'd be able to see that it's connected to a wide net of people. So, you'd see all these strings, energy strings coming off it from where the thought form was being formed from. said whereas you know, an egregore example, you would only be able to follow one source or a very small group of source, depending if, you know, because some egregores can be made by groups, so you know there's nothing stopping a coven making or a family making an egregore or a golem, etc. The exception I said was obviously that you wouldn't necessarily see if you got a golem where it was sent from, because the actual control device is placed within them, so you wouldn't be controlling them from afar, because you've programmed it and you've released it to go. So yeah, so from one point of view, you could be looking at when you're looking at a tulpa, if you could see them on an energetic level, you'll be able to see that they are being fed by millions and millions of little strands that would kind of link them, whereas a deity wouldn't have that. I think that's where most people kind of go, how do I know the difference between this one, and this one? And that's probably how I would break it down if you're are capable of looking at them on an energetic level. Because to a certain extent, they all kind of, to a certain extent, taste the same, because they taste manufactured, because they're all manufactured. So it's not a case of being able to go, that's not real cream, is about as far as you can possibly get. You know, and kind of like, oh no, that's not manufactured.
I can't believe
shit.
It's not butter.
Yeah. It's with those, it would be, you know, they could be really, really well done to the point that you could possibly believe, but at the end of the day, they would still have that fake taste of the artificial sugar or whatever it is that they've been used to make them, where their energy doesn't feel as pure as it does when it comes from a deification. But then we've often talked about it before, when you've got the difference between these core energetic deities that are form part of the universal you know, mechanism, compared to, say, you know, such and such as lower deity, or these a great example for those would be like the Sulis Minerva or something like that from Bath, where they've got two deities and they force them into an amalgamation, which happens so much with the kind of classical period absorbing lots of other cultures. You actually have a copy there where they force two deities, but enough of them believe in it that it's formed a separate branch off the main tree, shall we say. Is that kind of, you know, you would still be able to taste the fact that they have several strands to them that are all coming from that core energy.
Yeah.
Or you'd be able to follow the core energy backwards up. Again, we're talking complicated diagnosis there, and that's not what a beginner is going to see. Hence why I said kind of the main difference would be, or can they change form? Or, you know, what knowledge do they have? You would have to test their limits, I guess, as not necessarily a beginner, because how many beginners are going to come across these? But, you know, from that knowing, it's like the group I think I was talking about were a group of shamans, etc. So they used to visually seeing them. So not necessarily whether or not they would be able to see the individual strands of energy coming from them to following where the thought form came from, but might be able to kind of tell, you know, is it smoke and mirrors, or, you know, but how would you do it if I'm not hitting the note you want me to?
I think that's the problem, isn't it? A lot of things like this do come back to psychic development, because it's the age-old question that I do get asked a lot. How
When
do
is
you
the
know
right
what you're
writing
talking
test?
to? No, not that. That's only the Crochronites that ask that, and that's only when
We'll
they're
be
being
upsetting Lady Poison again.
particularly troublesome. You know, the age-old question of how do you know what it is that you're talking to? Because there's a lot of things, actually. Like we had our little troll in earlier, Jesus troll.
Yeah.
In the Bible and such, it says, you know, about testing the spirits to see whether the spirit is what it says it is, that kind of thing. Of course, a lot of the time, if you don't have a background in magic or any experience with psychic work, you're not going to know how to do that. And you
Yeah.
see that, don't you? We've had clients that have been in situations whereby they speak to a spirit, they might conjure it up, and it says that it's something, and it's not that thing that it says it is. It's trying to trick them.
Yeah.
So how do you, going back to the whole, was it the podcast I was talking to you about this on? I'm a lot like Gregory House from that House MD TV show that I used to watch. Not only am I a bit of a sociopath, but also I think that everyone lies, and I just assume everyone lies. So spirits are no different. If a spirit comes up and says, I am the Archangel Michael, I might say,
Prove it
right,
then.
okay. Well, I wouldn't say that. I think that normally, if
Oh, I
it's
would. I'd say
if
drop your
it's
trousers.
if it's nice and
Okay.
useful and helpful, I will humor it and say, okay. If I suspect it has some naughty intentions, then I'm more inclined to perhaps go a little bit further and see what's going on. Simply because, for the same reason why I've accidentally said thank you to cash points when I've withdrawn my money out. It says thank you to me when it comes up with the little thank you sign, and I think, well, thank you. I mean, it's just common courtesy. If you've got something that's there that may not be what it says it is, but it's being assisting and it's helping you out and it's not really particularly bothersome, I'm inclined to just pretend that it is that thing. Obviously, I know it's not, and I have my suspicions it's not. It's no different than if a crazy person comes up to you in the street and say, I'm Jesus. I might say, hello,
Yeah.
Jesus. I'm not going to sit there for 15 minutes trying to argue with the crazy person saying, you're not Jesus, though, are you? Because I don't care. If it is something that's trying to trick someone like a client or trying to trick me in because it's sinister, then I'd be more inclined to try and work out what's going on. And most of the time, it gets me intrigued. Now, in terms of how you'd find that out, again, it's the psychic development, isn't it? It's the palette.
Yeah.
Because we've got a lot of people that think that certain things that they work with are spirits or deities, and they're not actually the things that they think they're working with. There's a
Oh,
word
that
that I
poor John
can
D.
say. Well, there's a word that I can say now, which Chris will probably laugh at. That word's Bridget.
Yeah.
You know, there
Yeah.
are a lot of spirits, and I say spirits, that will use the form of another spirit because they will use that as kind of like camouflage for, trying to convince people that don't know any different. Is no different than me putting on a high vis jacket that says police on it and then going in and saying, well, I'm the policeman, you've got to do what I say. There are some things that will pretend to be other things. Now, if you're a witch or particularly good with psychic work, you can look at that police badge and that high vis jacket and say, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. That looks like a cheap knockoff because I've seen the real thing. It's like
Yeah.
when you go in Tesco's late at night and you see the young kids with really dodgy, crappy driving licenses that they've bought online that are trying to buy booze. They go in and they try and buy booze with these fake knockoff driving licenses. Well, someone that's never seen a driving license before, they might be
Isn't going to
inclined
know
to
the
think,
difference.
yeah, they might be inclined to think, well, yeah, that's kind of what I think that's supposed to look like. So I'll just go with it. I mean, I'm new to this. But if you're used to seeing driving licenses all of the time, then you know that that's something different. Now, the real difference is that if you're talking about proper witches, is that they should be able to strip that back. So, like with a driving license, you might have the little hologram thing, or you might do little checks, check the serial number in a database, something like that. I don't know. But with a witch, you can do this thing that I always call dissection, which is peeling back the layers of the onion. And that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot. I talk about it a lot because of the simple reason that I find it super useful and is super important. But categorizing spirits, that's the thing, isn't it? That's really difficult for a lot of people to do. I mean, if you're talking to something, say you happen across some spirit over, you go for a little jaunt somewhere around the UK and you stay overnight in a B&B, and there's a little mound or something like that, little hill fort, or I don't know what it is, and then you go on it, and a spirit pops up. How do you know what that spirit is? Is that spirit a dead person that's buried in the mound or buried there, that's lived there for God knows how many years? Or is it a land spirit? Or is it something else? Who knows? You know? Well, a witch should be able to find the answer to that out.
And any psychic worth their salt should be able to, really. I just don't think that you come across many that do. And I think that's quite the bit that worries us when we meet them.
Why is that?
Well,
not why does it worry us, but why can they not tell?
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to ask a sensible question. But yeah, a lot of that is down to they get used to a certain flavour, don't they? They don't investigate. They just trust that they have a gift. Is normally the biggest problem. Is I've got a gift, and Grandma said it was this. Therefore, I've never investigated beyond that, and that's what I think it tends to come down to. Is they've never felt the need to pull back because the information they have been getting is valid enough for the people they're reading for. The bit that obviously is why they should care what they are talking to is because it tends to depend on how they're feeding. And if you end up being food because you've not taken the time to realize what they are, then that's why we have to fix so many broken psychics. But you know, it is one of those things. It keeps us in business, but at the same time, if they got more professional, curiosity, they would probably know a bit more about what they talk to. Unfortunately, there's too many of these books out there, largely by what was her name, the born again Christian. What was her name? Doreen Virtue.
Oh, yeah.
Doreen Virtue.
Yeah. I always get
is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. I always get Doreen Valiente mixed up with the Virtue Woman.
Which is
the
fair.
Virtue Woman is the virtuous Christian now, isn't she? So so that's an interesting point, and one that I share. A lot of psychics, by their very nature, psychic mediums, particularly the ones that speak with spirits and channel spirits, are mediums. They're passive, so they relay messages and stuff, which is a little bit more different because obviously we work with things. We're inclined to try and work out why things are the way they are and how we change them. It's about accumulation of power so that we can change things we don't like and are not happy with. Yeah. So we would want to understand how a spirit works. And I don't mean how a spirit works as in, well, does this spirit heal? What is it actually made of? What is the tangible stuff? If you open the bonnet of a car, all the gubbins inside, or if I smash this laptop up, all the microchips, what do they do? You know, a witch is more inclined to think, what is inside a spirit? What is a spirit made out of?
And if it upsets me, can I salvage anything from it?
Yes, exactly. Can I take it apart? Swap the motherboard over or something like that? I don't know.
Reprogram it.
Yeah. So in terms of psychics, they are obviously just relying on using the spirit for counsel or getting the spirit to do something for them. We want to understand the mysteries of the universe and how the universe is made. So we want to take things apart. And if you're a spirit and you cannot run or fly fast enough through that wall, we is going to grab you in and take you apart and find out why you work. Okay. So, Chris, if you were to make an egregore, how would you go about doing that, you personally, versus if you were going to help a student construct one?
Okay. So with me personally, creating an egregore, it doesn't even need to have a physical body or even a physical representation in this world. So for me, it's breathing life into a thought is essentially what you are doing. So as long as I can give it an energetic body and then breathe life into it, that's all I need to achieve.
But you're a super witch.
but I'm a super witch. So the alternative is obviously, now I tend to separate the egregores as they don't need to have a representative body. So to me, a thought form without a body is an egregore. So, you know, it may have something that is tethering it, like something physical tethering it, but it doesn't have to be representative. So whereas, say, a golem, for example, I would expect there to be it made of earth or clay in its physical form and have a physical, you know what I mean? Like there is, because the whole point is magical words need to be used, put inside it, and you can smash the thing open in order to get and take apart the incantation. So, but that's kind of following the Jewish mysticisms that created them in the first place. So for me, I think a golem is very specific in the methodology that goes into making one.
Comes from
Whereas
a
I think,
culture, and
yeah, whereas an egregore, it's a bit flexy, isn't it? Because a lot of people have used, like, you could use the word fetch or something like that interchangeably with an egregore, whereas I don't think you could do that by accident with a golem. A golem has to have a physical representation of a body. Whereas I think the others can if you want, but I tend to think of egregores as those that are complete thought form in their truest sense. So they can have a tether, and that's how the difference between how I would make one and how I'd teach a student to make one. If it's the first time they're creating a thought form, then I would have them make it with a tether. So something that they are breathing life into. So whether or not that be, you know, a river rock or a little patty that they've dried out in the sun or whatever, that has a physical that can be destroyed if needed to be as a fail safe. Whereas I don't feel the need to build, you know, they have their own fail safes built in, but that's complicated to explain to a beginner the first time they create a thought form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm slightly different, but that's because of the sorts of times which I see the word spring up. Because Tulpa, egregore, thought from all of this, what you're talking about is creating synthetically a spirit. So you're actually breathing life into something, a sentient spirit. You're creating a sentient spirit, much like you might get jiggy with a woman and then months later a baby might pop out and a new life. You're actually talking about just breathing life into something, a spirit that you're designing when it comes to egregore. I always see them as engineering, pieces of engineering that you actually make to do a job. You're making a worker bee. Tulpas are spirits that accidentally manifest. You'd say about, obviously, with the Jewish mysticism thing, that's coming from a culture with specific rituals associated with that and stories and such. So that kind of makes sense to me as well. Homunculus, though, that's a little bit more unusual. What about a homunculus? What's your ideas of the homunculus?
I don't like them because I think they're creepy.
Right.
So I've actually never made one, at least not in this lifetime, and I can't think of a lifetime I have that's in my Rolodex. But they're kind of a mishmash of the two, aren't they? They normally have a visage, a fetish. So there's normally a fetish created in order to shape it, isn't there? So it's somewhere between, at least that's my understanding, is there is somewhere between a golem and a kind of between a golem and some kind of votive fetish.
Okay. Is it homunculus or homunculi?
Well, it
What's
depends
the
how many you've got
plural?
of them. The
What's the
plural would be
plural?
homunculi.
Homunculi, yeah. Homunculi or homunculus, I always think of that as you're taking something that is already alive, already has a spark there, and you're co-opting it. You're manipulating it as it grows. So I'd class something like a mandrake almost as a
Okay.
homunculi, because a mandrake's a living thing, it's a living plant. But what you're talking about is you're taking that living thing, living plant, and you're forcing the spirit to evolve. So the plant stays the same. The physical attributes of the plant might change a little bit because, you know, that's how things kind of work out. Whatever manifests up here ends up manifesting down here. If you change it and give it, you know, sentience and stuff, then its physical shape might start to make look a little bit like what it manifests
Okay.
like astrally. But yeah, I would see it generally as you've not breathed the life into it. The life is already there. You're just manipulating it to grow like a bonsai tree. It's alive, but you're pruning it and you're shaping it, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And mandrakes are quite interesting for that because they are quite mystical in general with the energies that are there. But you're kind of seeing a tradition almost of mandrake, mandragora, having that spirit that's manifest there that has the capability of growing further. And as a magical practitioner, you're bonding with it, teaching it, and you're forcing it to grow outside of its normal evolutionary process. Now that gets really complicated and sounds kind of strange, but that's my idea of homunculus, is that you haven't done the breathing of the life part, you've done the extra bits. Whereas egregores is kind of like you're in charge of the full procedure, you've planned it, designed it, and you've breathed life into it, and then you're helping it grow. Whereas a tulpa is it's just accidentally manifested. So yeah, it's a little bit of a strange one. So why
Like I say,
would
I always
someone?
find them a bit grotesque,
Yeah.
which makes sense now that you explain how you would make one, because that would make sense as to why they appear so grotesque to me.
Yeah.
Because they're, you know, Frankenstein's monster, aren't they? More
Yeah.
than they are creating something from scratch. Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah,
Like I said,
it's
it's a
words.
one type that I've had very little contact with.
It's
I
words at
don't
the
think
end of
I've
the
even
day.
come across. I don't think I've even come across somebody else's, if that makes sense. Like people have
Well, I
talked to
mean,
me theoretically about them, but I've never actually seen one.
egregores are probably one of the things that I see the most, just because
Mm,
they're designed to do something specific, and if you happen across them, normally if they're used for protection or some form of protection, which I'll go into a little bit later, then you might have to beat through that protection. If you're going to beat through it, might be a good idea to rip it apart. If you're ripping it apart, might learn a little bit about it. So egregores and such, I know a fair amount about, and I see them a lot. Tulpas is one of those things that you just see kind of manifest. Very
mm,
often surrounding, I find them to tend to be quite local.
yeah,
So if you've got, you know, Darren Brown, the I wouldn't call him magician, the magician with not a K, not magic with a K, stage magic,
yeah,
psychologist. He used to have this really interesting series, which was it was into the realms of psychology, but from a kind of almost like a mystical occult. So he used to do experiments and things. And he did this experiment with this statue that was in this park on the edge of this village. And it was a statue of a dog. And he just spread the rumor in the village that if you go into the park and pat the dog or stroke the dog, you'll be lucky. But what
yeah,
actually ended up happening is that more and more people, they put a little video camera there, more and more people, as the word spread, oh, if you never stroke the dog, it's been there for years, you've got to go and stroke it. And they made all these fake legends and stuff like that. But what actually happened was the people that were stroking the dog and believing in it, they were getting more lucky. They took people that didn't believe, people that did believe, to an amusement arcade and stuff like that. The people that did believe and stroke the dog ended up winning far more. You know, you had various things like that. It was quite interesting. Now, from looking at and taking that apart, partly that spell casting in that, you know, the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the all of the people that believed in that, they caused the magic to happen. Now, the step further is when if enough energy and enough attention goes to that dog, then that will manifest. So I've seen this happen through spells accidentally. Some tulpas and things happen through spells. We had an issue earlier on today whereby a client was perhaps started a spell that they didn't feed enough energy to, but there was no link, so the spell kept pulling more and more and more through, weakening the witch that had cast the original spell. Again, going into something a little bit more complicated than your standard witchcraft live video, but it is one of those things whereby the attention that's gone to that thing, is it enough for the personality to take hold? Is there a personality that evolves out of that? Because sentience and personality to a certain extent kind of go hand in hand. Even some plants have personalities, don't they?
Yeah, there's a slight difference, but yeah, they're kind of, if it's starting to develop a personality, there's a likelihood that it's going to have sentience too. If you go that way around, if it gets complicated enough to develop its own personality, then yeah. So that's where I struggle with forests. I know that's a weird thing to say, where from an animistic point of view, where you go into some forests and it has kind of like a Borg mind of, yes, there is they are separate technically, but has a connection. They're also similar in connection. Whereas you go into some forests and they're kind of so old that they each tree has its own personality. You know, well, the older trees within it have got their own personality. But essentially, yeah, it is that kind of chicken egg situation, which comes first. But yeah, as they kind of develop, obviously with egregores, etc., you kind of don't want that to a certain extent, depending on what you've designed. Obviously, if you've built yourself a guardian for a workspace or whatever, then you want it to do a specific job. You want it to have a certain level of control of its own because it needs to be able to adapt. But at the same time, you don't want it to outgrow its purpose. So, like you say, I think that's why kind of bonsai is a really good analogy for them. It is that kind of stunted growth. You want to control the extent at which they can grow at. The interesting thing is kind of for me, how many spirits out there were once egregores from certain kind of witches that the witch died without putting a failsafe in, and kind of have got their own little lives going on. Is interesting, but then I suppose it would depend on how you design them to absorb energy. And I think that's what it always comes down
It's all
to,
in the design.
is how well designed they are.
So if we take this back to something a little bit more practical and witchy, because we haven't really talked about the fetch, and the fetch, the witch's fetch or a coven's fetch, is one of those things that I think a little bit like a familiar. It's a very
I think they're often confused, aren't they?
Well, it's very polarizing, this subject, because some people will say a familiar is a spirit that shapeshifts, blah 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 blah. Other people will say that their cat is their familiar, and you can't side with one.
But the difference is one of those groups is wrong.
One of those groups is wrong, but what side do you sit on when it comes to a fetch? What would be your definition of a fetch? And the purpose of it? Why would you make one, assuming you make one? And what category would you fit into? Egregore, tulpa, this and that?
Fetches that I've ever experienced, or I'm trying to think I've created. Yes. So I would probably call the only thought forms I would have created that I would call a fetch that would fall into that category are those that have gone And the reason they're called fetches for me is because they're designed to go fetch things. So, it is that simple. A witch's fetch is designed specifically to collect.
The witch,
So,
is it basically what you're saying is it's the coven bitch?
not quite, but they often are.
They're used as that.
They often are. But for me to be, if you need something to make its way into your life, and you need it to be happen in a very controlled way, that's when you use a fetch. So it would be that, I need that particular entity to arrive or whatever at just the right moment, then yes, that's the sort of thing I would have used a fetch for.
So it's
And
kind of like a chauffeur / butler for a coven. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, so more of that. I think they get used a bit more as a coven bitch, but I think that's a wasted use of a fetch, because actually they have the potential to be very, very useful, particularly if you're doing group workings. It has the potential to make a lot of people's lives a lot easier. But yeah, I would probably put them in the egregore category of,
Okay.
manufactured for a specific purpose, doesn't need to have a physical body, blah blah blah. Obviously, those are the ones that I would refer to as egregores that are made by groups of people, for a specific combined task. But yeah, I don't think fetches are used as efficiently as they could be, compared to the ones that
We've
I've
got a
had.
question. I think it's a question. It could be a statement. Why are you sitting on the fence? A familiar is not a feline. Well, no, I don't think a familiar is a feline. What we're saying is that it's polarizing. You go in a lot of groups and they'll swear blind that their cat is their familiar. I think we might have already talked about familiars on a different one. I'm
I
sure
think
we did a video.
I'm sure I did a Witchcraft Live video
Yeah.
about it where you trolled me the whole time. Is that one?
Possibly.
I think that was the one you trolled me the whole time.
Yes, I do remember that now. Okay. If any of you guys want to ask questions, then obviously this is the question and answer session. So please do feel free to ask questions. Okay, so if you had a coven and that coven wanted to make a fetch, how would you advise that they do that? Because the problem with covens is that it's groups of people, so it's coven dynamics. So some are a little bit more loose than others. Some covens, kind of like moots, are just a bunch of people that come together for 1 or 2 workings every now and then. Others are more like families where they really do a lot of work together. There's a kind of a structure like you do get with families. So how would you advise the creation of a fetch? And what is the fetch loyal to? Is it loyal to the high priest, priestess of the Wiccan coven? Is it loyal to?
It really depends on the coven dynamics, because often fetches will be created by whoever's group it is. So in coven dynamics, they're normally created by whoever leads the coven, and they're used by the group. So at least those are the ones I've experienced.
That's interesting.
However, actually, the best way to make a fetch as a coven would be that you actually agree on exactly what you want. And like I said, I think that's why lots of these places they end up with them just being the coven bitch, is because they're not equally invested in it, because they haven't made it together. Whereas actually, if they're created as an equal sharing kind of exercise, you've got more chance of them being used properly because they're all personally invested. Interesting one for you though. Would you fetch is about one of the few egregores that I would probably include blood with as a limiting factor. How have you actually? What would you say about that?
What, using blood or the creation of egregores and fetches and stuff.
using egregores and fetches.
So I would never use blood for egregore and that use. So the problem with me is that I come from the opposite perspective of most of the time when I see fetches particularly, yeah, they are more often than not used to either protect a coven or to spy and do the dirty work of a coven. Now, I'm not saying I'm necessarily a nasty person that gets targeted a lot by nefarious covens and stuff. However, much like the schoolyard playground, the bullies don't necessarily like to do all of the bullying themselves if they can get some other thing to do it for them. So, if you're gonna send something after someone like me to assess me as a potential threat, maybe I've moved into your patch or your area of your coven or something like that, then they might send a fetch. A coven, local coven might send a fetch to kind of sniff you out, see what you're all about, and then report back. Now, the problem may arise if you catch that fetch, and if that fetch is being sent to me or to someone or whoever it is, if there's a practitioner that has more than the basics understanding of magic, then they're able to capture that fetch. So if you send your fetch to go and do your dirty work and beat up another practitioner, that practitioner might catch that fetch and might start to tinker with it, shall we say. So what you have to remember is that it is possible, because you've breathed life into this thing, but it is still linked to you, your coven. So if you as a coven create a fetch and send it down that way, most of the time, a lot of practitioners, if you say you were a Black Witches coven or some evil coven and you want to target someone down the road, Raven Grimsby, for example, because he's an idiot, you might send your fetch after him, and that Raven Grimsby might defend himself. He might be able to put up a bit of a fight and then kill that fetch. Well, you as a coven need to create another fetch because he's killed your fetch. However, if he was to capture it and to take it at its core and go into it, that is linked to your coven. There was a point where you breathed that life as a collective, or if you're, say, the leader of the coven, whatever, you breathe life into that. There's a link there to that. So a slightly more adept practitioner can use that open doorway. We see a lot of open doorways being used in magic, particularly when it comes to maleficent magic, as two-way and not one-way. So don't think for 1 minute that if you create an egregore, you can get it to go and fight your battles for you. Yes, you can, but there is also the danger that if someone has the ability to take that and, go through that link, not only can they get to you, but they can also suss information out about you. So I've written a little blog post, because I do a lot of blog posting for the Advanced Witchcraft group and the No Holds Barred Witchcraft group. And I don't know if it's out yet, but I wrote one about, it's called A Magician's Deception. And it was talking a little bit about protective magic. And this is one that I like to use. No, I don't think it has gone yet. It'll be coming out. I think possibly it might be this week's one, because I set them to auto-release. But basically, it was talking about, if you do baneful magic, a baneful magic spell, and send that at a practitioner, that practitioner can, if they're sensitive enough, spot that coming, stop it, and then trace back where it's coming from. If they can trace back where it's coming from, they'll know it's coming from you if you've cast it. Okay. And they might make you their little pet project of, that person that poked me that time, I'm going to fucking keep annihilating them. You're going to be my new favorite toy. Now, an unusual way of creating egregores is what I like to call a mask, magician's mask. So this is a technique that I teach some people. So if you create a fake egregore, okay, or you create an egregore of a fake person, And this is where it gets slightly more complicated. Much like a spirit can possess a person, so a medium, spirit can go in and possess the medium's body. You, as a spirit from your astral body, reach into that egregore you've just created and wear it like a little sock puppet and get that thing, channel the energy through and get that thing to cast the spell on the target. When that person traces that energy back, it will come back to that egregore. So there's two things that this is useful for. If you don't have particularly adept practitioners that all think they're badasses, which a lot of them do, they can sense things back, but they can't go much further than that. The whole tennis match of hex in that way, the person stops it, hex is back, hex is that way, hex is back. This is a perfect kind of little breaking point here. Because if you do your work through this egregore, your little sock puppet, and fire that spell through that egregore at the target, and that target fires it back, it would just stick to that egregore. So like the mask. Not only can they not see who you are, but any spells that get rebounded back will go to that egregore. So providing you cut off the link between you and the egregore, that's a safety net, a kind of firewall as it will. Now, I explained this a little bit in the blog post. My favorite way to do it, of course, is to, because I'm a bit of an asshole sometimes, is
Nefarious.
Nefarious, yes. Is instead of using a human spirit, I like to fashion said egregore to look like a famous spirit. So, if you fashion said egregore to look a little bit like Hecate, that non-advanced witch may think that Hecate is a working against me. And not only will they not think that it's you, so you get away with it with an unblemished reputation, but they're also shit scared that they think some super powerful entity is after them. Now, you've got to be careful with this because, much like impersonating a police officer, that's illegal. Impersonating a spirit, not really illegal, but some spirits do frown upon the practice. So,
yeah,
what I do tend to worry about, given that I know how to do this and have done this before, is a lot of these beginner witches that latch onto these little spirits in books, particularly ones that are written, grimoires written by unscrupulous magicians. How many of those people are they working with then when they open up that goetic looking Book of Shadows or egregore, ceremonial magic book or grimoire or whatever, and they see a bunch of spirit sigils and stuff like that. How many of them are actually working with a spirit that's been around for a long time? How many of them are working at an egregore? How many people are working with an egregore that's actually been created by a magician that's working through that egregore to pull stuff from that practitioner?
yeah.
Beginners. I mean, they're like fish in a barrel, which is why we created the Witchcraft Live Facebook group as a training ground to help you all out, because there's some bad shit that can happen. And I've just rambled about loads of stuff. Did any of that make sense?
Some of it.
You'll have to wait for the blog post to come out.
No,
I
it
go
was
into
good.
more detail.
It was
But
good.
that's something that you don't hear that. People don't talk about that sort of thing. They'll talk about, oh yeah, I created an egregore, and that egregore is designed to find me parking spaces. Or, oh, we designed this fetch, and this fetch will go and protect our circle and this and that, and it will guard our working space and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you can kind of hear about that, but not many people will talk about using people's own egregores and tulpas and fetches against them and creating egregores to use as a mask to hide who they are, their identity, like a fake Facebook profile, as you will. Heinrich. So, is there anything else we need to add, or do we need to spill the beans and talk about this Witch Wars competition?
I think we need to talk about Witch Wars, otherwise we won't fit it in. But go on.
Witch Wars competition. So, for those that don't know and have been living under a rock with no internet or Facebook or YouTube or anything like that, you won't be aware. So I'll recap. We have a Witch Wars competition. We've noticed that there's a lot of people that like to think of themselves as witches, magicians, and magical practitioners that don't do no fucking magic. So what we decided to do is to get all of these little woodlice and cockroaches out of the broom closet and get them to do some actual magic. We've made a little incentive. So what we've said is we've given you someone to practice your hexing on. So all this hexing and black magic and stuff that you're too scared to try out. Get into that. We did originally make it for the hexing because we thought, well, there's a lot of people that are scared to try that and it get rebounded. So they don't want to practice their hexing if they're new at it, at an actual witch or mundane or whatever, in case there's a backlash. So we gave people a target. The target's name is Raven Grimsby. And what we said is you are okay, it's okay to hex him. Okay, hex him, practice your hexing on him. What we then thought was actually some people don't like hexing. They want to practice healing. So what we thought is if we do 2 teams, we have the hexing team and the healing team. One of us can lead the hexers and one of us can lead the healers. And whoever saves Raven Grimsby, and Raven Grimsby is the person that's doing well, or if Raven Grimsby is getting a curse and is having a rather shit life and such, the hexers all basically win. So I kind of just stumbled through that, but do you want to explain that? I promise I am.
Yeah, so basically we got people to pick teams, which you suggested that obviously, because apparently on the Love and Light one, I'm not quite sure how that works.
That's what they say.
But we would each lead a team. Obviously, we haven't given advice necessarily on how to do it, and we ourselves haven't taken part. So we were just, figureheads for it. So I've created 2 teams in order to, and we said we would reveal who would potentially be the winning team. So although I am not present where Liam is, he will be fair about the energy as to who is going to be the winner.
Yes. So Raven Grimsby, there is no it is not, no, it should be no surprises to some people, but basically there's a reason why we did the Egregores and Tulpas thing, because Raven Grimsby is here tonight with us. Raven Grimsby is here. Raven Grimsby is not actually a real person. Raven Grimsby is an egregore. So when we got some of our people to hex him and such like that, we did create this egregore before that happened. So I personally made it and breathed life into him. In terms of what I used to make this egregore, well, we did talk a little bit about on the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon. We can't be giving you all our secrets, but I thought it would be kind of amusing and ironic to have the physical basis for this egregore in the physical world, given that he's an egregore, make him an egregore. Get it? So what I did was
I'm taking no part of that. I'm just saying that was nothing to do with me. That is an awful joke, even for you, Liam.
I used one of those computer software programs to come up with fake faces. So this isn't a real person's face, but he looks
we haven't used somebody as target practice for you.
I printed it out and I attached this image magically to this egg. Now this egg I put inside this jar and I breathed life into using a little ritual. I can't get him out now. He don't want to come out.
No, he's been there for a couple of weeks.
He's been there for fucking hell, the weight on it. God. Raven Grimsby, his name is on there. Raven Grimsby. So I made this egregore And he's cracked. God, he is slimy as fuck, I tell you. So basically, after making the egregore Raven Grimsby, breathing a little life into him and creating a backstory for him, because it's important that he has an actual, essentially a soul. Although it's a synthetic soul, I did create a soul for him, fed enough energy for it to manifest, knowing that other people with their hexes and their healings and stuff like that would direct that at it. So over the past couple of weeks, some very interesting manifestations.
Where did he go?
Right, I gotta go to this other camera because some such manifestations are continuing to occur. And I do realise that I've got that behind me.
I was going to say you've got
like
horns. Sorry.
But there we
Liam
go.
is horny.
I can't help that. I'm presuming you can hear me okay, because I've had to switch to the laptop now. Right, okay. So, Raven Grimsby, there's some interesting times that came with this. So we thought, ethically speaking, we couldn't get you to go after a real person, because that would be a little bit nasty. So we did create this knowing that any energy you do send is going to go directly to this. What we then wanted to do to introduce you to a couple of things. One of those things is that psychics out there that we have been working with have been trying to read Raven Grimsby. We didn't tell you why we don't like Raven Grimsby or give you any sort of background. What we did decide to do when we created him was to give him the backstory that he is a third-degree initiate of Alexandrian witchcraft and a pedophile. And many people have been messaging in saying, I don't know who he is. I know that he's a bad person. I think he's a paedophile. All of you psychics out there, and we do have a number of professional psychics on the books. There are clients that have wanted to get involved in this, have all been saying the same thing. He's a bad man and a paedophile. Well, guess what? He's not a bad man or a paedophile. He's not even a person. He's an egregore, which I programmed for anyone to read. If you were a psychic and you read what this is, he is the little mask. Remember I talked about the mask? This is the sort of thing you're going to get if you employ those sort of nefarious techniques. So, the little egregore Raven has been lying in here. You don't like me saying that, but he's an egregore and he's an egg, you know? The reason for that is when you create egregores and stuff, because we want this to be an earth-based thing, we want to fool people into thinking and picking up the energy signature of a human. It needs to have a human body. When you trace the energy back, it needs to feel like it's coming from the physical world, not the astral world or anything like that. And so I had to give him a physical body. So all of the energy that's been directed has been directed at through this, through the name, into the egg. I've put the egg on a solution of salt and quartz crystal just to hold the energy there. And it's been sitting on a shelf. Now, some of you may notice that it's been on the shelf behind me in a number of videos and such that I've done, and in a lot of consultations. Some of you will start to be thinking, I might have to rewind some of those videos and see if it was there, or shit, that was in the background when he was talking to me on Skype or whatever. Now, the idea behind this was to tell, because this should have a physical, effect on the egg. Now, it has had a physical effect on the egg, because bearing in mind, this was, I made sure that this was a perfectly happy, bland egg when I first started using it. He has got a number of cracks that have appeared on him, which doesn't actually look too good. I'm going to try and put it in the camera, but I don't think it's quite going to. Can you kind of see cracks and things are appearing on the egg? I haven't touched this at all. Now, a couple of you, because our Patreons will know this, they were in on the inside of this, because a week after we did this, we actually released a Patreon-only video explaining what we were doing. So the Patreons knew after they cast a couple of spells and such that Raven Grimsby was a egregore. What fascinated me the most, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, Chris, or whether you think this too, the amount of people that were willing to hex someone that they don't know anything about just because we told you to do it was a fascinating. And I personally have to say, I'm so proud that I have got, or we have got as Thoth, the company, an army of witches out there that are perfectly happy to magically fuck up anyone we tell them to. That was fascinating.
I felt loved.
Yes, I did. I felt like a cult leader for a minute. Like I could get you all to drink some Kool-Aid and do something nasty. So basically, what we'd like to do is to assess Raven Grimsby to see what sort of energy has been held within this egg, whether it's a healing energy or whether it's not. Now, it's really difficult for you guys to understand the process for this. So there is a traditional witchcraft folk magic technique for reading things, and it's called an egg reading, where you crack the egg and see what's inside and stuff like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to video that happening, and we're going to let you obviously do your readings that you want to on the egg. So I'm going to do it in high resolution, so it won't be done right this second, but I will be doing it, and I'll be putting it on the YouTube and everything like that, so you'll be able to see it and study it and rewind it and stuff, which you can't really do on live. But what I will say is there's been some interesting manifestations. So a couple of days, I think it was the Wednesday after, because we did this on a Sunday, was it? The Wednesday after, I came into the consultation room, which I'm in at the moment, and I actually saw a figure with a face not dissimilar to this stood in front of the cabinet that it was on. It just so happens that a certain witch who was on a team, one of the teams, I'm not going to say what that person's name was, happened to be doing a ritual or some magic at that time. I didn't know that at the time, but that person, we'd spoken a little bit about it. And this was before I think they realized it was an egregore as well. So what has actually been happening is the more energy you guys have been feeding into this, the more Raven Grimsby is actually manifesting in the astral world. And there's a palpable kind of a feeling from it. You got a little bit of feeling when I created him, but it was a bit of a problem with me having to move him eventually because it was interfering. I did also make the mistake of putting him on shelf over there. Second from top shelf. Got a skull on it at the moment. Was an altar at one point, which I never scrubbed down. So there was a lot of interesting energies that were also there. My bad. Housekeeping isn't always my strong point. I have to admit that. But it was an interesting one, this little project. There will be Witch Wars again. The next time we do Witch Wars, it will be something different, and no, it will not be an egregore. So, thanks for taking part in Witch Wars. If you have any questions for us, then let us know. The winning team seems to be my team, in that not only were you able to cause the egg to crack, but you're also able to, and the psychics amongst you may be able to pick up on a couple of things. But I tell you what, considering this is a jar that's got a little bit of rock salt in, some quartz crystal and an egg, it's fucking heavy. It actually
I'm just glad you're breaking it at your house, so not mine.
So what I'm going to do is I will again upload the video in high resolution of the egg reading, and what I thought might be quite interesting is to annotate that. So I'm going to put notes and explain a little bit about egg reading. Now, egg reading is normally used as a form of divination, but hell, this is Thoth at the end of the day, and it's Liam and Chris. So why would we do a bog standard egg reading that any old cunning folk or witches YouTube video channel would do when we can actually tear apart a an egregore/tulpa and read that. It'll be very interesting to see what's on the inside, but if there's a chicken or something like that, you know, that would be quite a scary thing, some putrefied thing. I don't know what's going
I
on.
don't feel like we can call this a success unless there's at least some blood and a bit of an embryo in there, to be quite honest.
Well, you never know. You never know. I mean, there's a lot of cracks and stuff like that. The energy that's been coming off, and the fact that I had to move it because it keeps interfering with all of the fucking technology and stuff like that. I mean, it interfered. It interfered.
Oh my
almost
God.
Do you remember when I accidentally put what I thought was a picture of an old cunning woman on one of the altars of the dead? And it happened to not be a cunning woman at all. It happened to be some man or something that was using the image of said woman. Could have been a magical practitioner. I don't know. It caused all absolute havoc for a couple of days. And I had to get rid of it. Even Chris's rosemary smudge sticks didn't get rid of it. I had to bring out the big guns and do it myself. But yeah, we've got someone that's actually just
who thinks they're as funny as you are.
Glad you're doing an educational video and all. I'm dying of suspense to see the inside of the egg. I could do it now. Should I do it now? I know that this isn't the most high resolution camera because the other one's now packed in. But I could do it now. What do you think, Chris? Shall I I could crack it and then I could let all of you guys. The fact that it wasn't an actual person explains so much to me. Well, there we go. A lot
oh, of course, Kay wants it now. Oh, okay. Look, they all want it now.
They all want to know. Please, please, please. Right, okay. So I'll have to do it now then. I know I'm going to end up getting egg all over me, aren't I, or something? Right, okay.
Well, so. I would rather you don't get putrefied egg all over yourself.
Oh, God. It just gives me shivers every time I fucking pick it up. Right, so I'm going to put this jar to the side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some spring water and I'm going to put that in this jar. And then I'm going to crack it. And then I'm going to put it in, okay? So I don't know whether it would be better if I did it round that way or what, but I wasn't planning on doing this now. There we go. So I'll move the shrunken head. In fact, I might have to cleanse this space afterwards.
Egregore dissection. You can't say we don't do things live this way now, can you? No excuses.
You can't really say we plan shit either, can you?
No.
So there he is. Everyone say goodbye to Raven Grimsby. May his spirit not live on. Oh, God. I'm going to fold him in on himself because I don't want to keep staring into those creepy little eyes. Right.
You're not as bad as one of the ones that you wanted. Oh, that looks gross.
Oh, my God. Okay. Oh. I'll put this. I just wipe my hands.
He's got placenta on him.
I'll wipe the placenta in this bubble wrap. I'm gonna wrap up someone's order in tomorrow.
Oh.
So here we have Raven Grimsby. Now there are a couple of things that are floating in there. There's a little bit of air and such as well. Can you see him?
Oh.
Can
you put the lid on the jar?
The one thing that doesn't quite come across on camera
You're gonna have
Go.
to take some photographs and stuff afterwards.
Here we go. So he's in the jar.
Oh, just look at the colour of it.
It's actually green. I don't know. The egg in the middle is yellow, and it has a line going through, but it's actually green, and it's basically just sunk straight to the bottom. There. There's also a couple of little wisps and things like that, which was rather gross. Inside the casing of said egg, there's quite a lot of, I don't know if you can really see because of the camera, cracks on the inside. I don't know if I get the light right. Cracked on the inside. Now, how much of that is obviously when I cracked it, I'm not entirely sure. But the slime in there, I don't want to say what that kind of looks like. It does look a bit pre-cummy, I have to say. But there we go. That's inside Raven Grimsby. But yeah,
Wow.
overall, I have to say, your team, Chris, if you were supposed to be keeping this expression alive, you've not done the best job in the world.
But it's not a fetus.
It's not a fetus. So what would you expect then if it was if you would, what would you expect if like the differences within an egg reading then for a positive
So
or a negative?
if I'd expected the healers to actually win, I'd have expected there to be an actual fetus in there. I would have
wouldn't
wanted
have expected any cracks either.
no cracks, and I'd have expected the start of what signs of blood or something like that, where they've started to form. Oh God.
It's very green, I have to say. And this is sticking together. Do you remember when I get beginners to manifest an orange ball?
Yeah.
I suppose that don't really looks kind of yellowy on the screen.
You'll have to take some pictures for Witchcraft Live.
Yeah. But there we go. It's very gloopy.
Yeah.
What do you feel from it? Not being in the room, obviously. What do you pick up from it?
I don't like it.
No, it's not the nicest. The smell wasn't great.
No, I'm glad I wasn't in that room, is all I'm going to say.
It's still
The air
around,
bubbles
though.
are what it's the air bubbles that are freaking me out.
Yeah. They're stuck to it. If you look, every time you move it around, the air bubbles actually stick to it. And there's a little one round there. Can you see that little one?
Yeah.
It's stuck to. It's almost like it's got a dress. Here we go.
Well, where have you gone now? Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's well and truly you guys. Team Liam won that one, definitely.
It's not the nicest energy, I have to say. Although I felt worse energy, this isn't the nicest one. But to be fair, it was confined to the egg, and you did manage to escape. It was a basic casing that I constructed for it, but you were able to push the energy past and have him manifest outside of that. So well done. It's more than I was expecting anyway. In terms of, obviously, we said that we'd give a prize to the winners. So your
the
prize
whole team will get one.
Yeah, so we're gonna send eggs to all of you. No, what we're gonna do,
rotten ones.
What we're gonna do is, because a lot of people that give away prizes and stuff on these Facebook groups and things, they tend to give away shit stuff like psychic readings with a tarot reader that, well, we'll leave it at that. So what we thought we'd do is give away physical prizes. So all of the people on my team that registered to be on my team, what we're going to do is we're going to send you all a prize, a physical prize. So I'll be messaging you all individually, and I'll be asking you whether you want to claim your prize and where you would want us to send it. Now, Chris,
Yeah.
what is the prize?
Are you gonna make me reveal it here?
Well, we might as well. Should we reveal it here, or should we only let the people that won know what the prize is? I don't know.
I feel like the only people that actually should know what it was are the team that win. And then
Okay.
when we get round 2, I think we should show them physically what they've won and what's up for grabs the next time.
So which was won? We're only gonna let the people who won the prize know what the prize was. But that's a shame because it's a good prize. Okay, so which wars 2 then? We'll reveal the prize before the battle. Which wars 1? You're all, if you're on my team, not only gonna get the prize, but you're gonna know what the prize was, and you're gonna know what the prize is gonna be, because we'll give the same prize away for Witch Wars 2. And yes, Witch Wars will return. And next time, we won't be a hexing and a cursing egregores.
No, although I am really tempted to say one of them in the future should be trying to manifest a chicken out of an egg, because I think that should happen.
Right, but it needs to be divisive, remember? So it needs to be are they gonna win? Are they gonna manifest the chicken? Or are they not gonna manifest the chicken?
Okay. We'll see
I
that.
don't.
We'll hold that for future date. But
I
no,
have got an idea what I'd like to do for Witch Wars 2, and no people
of
that keep
course you do, because
messaging
you're a
me and
psychopath.
asking me. Well, people keep messaging me and asking me whether we can put their pictures of their ex-boyfriends and ex-husbands and that online. And I keep saying, look, if you want to go and do that, do that. But we're not going to do that for Witch Wars 1, because
No.
we already had Raven for that. Witch Wars 2, we got an idea what we're going to do, though. And it's going to be just as divisive, so don't worry about it. There'll still be 2 teams at least. Might even be 3 teams, I don't know. But hopefully you enjoyed this Ask a Witch. It was a little bit different. And thanks everyone for. I will be messaging tomorrow the people that won. And for the people that didn't win, well, I hope you're not sore losers, but losers you are. You might
See,
need
I
to
wouldn't
work.
have said something like that now, would I? Which maybe does make me the nice one.
It does make you the nice one. And for those that were picking up and trying to do the readings on Raven and couldn't quite get the feeling that there was something not up, that's something that you need to work on. So with the psychic reading, which we talked about, tracing where the energy is coming back to, you should be able to look at that energy when we put the picture up and feel and sense, what is that? Is that a person? Is it not a person? Where's the energy coming from? You should be able to do that. So if you haven't already, go on the Witchcraft Patreon, the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon, and get mentoring from us so you can learn how to do stuff like that. I mean, Chris is itching to teach you the mysteries and the secrets of the psychic arts, aren't you, Chris?
No, I hear that's your specialism.
What? Mysteries of the psychic arts? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Well, I'm
your
itching to
specialism.
Okay. Psychic arts is okay, right. If you say so. I thought I was in charge of magical warfare, but there we go.
No,
No.
no.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. This has gone on for about almost half an hour over what we were supposed to go over, but thanks for
It's fine.
bearing with anyway. And yeah, no need to curse or hex Raven Grimsby anymore. However, I am tempted to see if we can revive him and keep him going as a kind of little Tulpa egregore. I don't know, because that's the thing. The other videos are out there, so I would imagine some Wiccan that's start trying to do something a little naughty for the first time might stumble across our Thoth TV YouTube channel and think, oh, look, there's that person. Let me just hex that Raven person. But who knows? I don't know. Let us know. Do you think we should keep him and revive him? Or do you think we should let him die? Because there's still an energy presence there. We could probably, do something with it.
All we did was take his shell off. He's
Yeah,
not dead yet.
he's not quite dead yet. So yeah, so goodbye everyone. Let us know if you want us to save Raven Grimsby or just let him die. I can discard him at the crossroads tomorrow. But whoever, the majority of people rule. So at the end of the day, if I got 5 comments that say save him and 2 that say kill him, we're gonna save him. If we've got 10 comments that say kill him and 2 say save him, we're gonna kill him. So let us know in the comments. And goodbye from us this week. Goodbye, everyone.